All right, so I will start at welcome everybody. I'll just read the notice of non-discrimination. You are invited to participate on our transportation planning process regardless of your race, color, national origin, including limited English proficiency, religion, creed, gender, ancestry, ethnicity, disability, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, veteran status, or background. Next. And I'll read the accessibility statement. This meeting is accessible to people with disabilities. Zoom products are compliant with exceptions with the following standards: Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.1 Level AA standards and revised Section 508 standards. If you require any additional accommodations in order to participate fully in this meeting, or if you have any technical difficulties, please contact Judy Day of the MPO staff at day@ctps.org or 857-702-3704. or via the chat box. Just to go over the guidelines, haven't changed. All participants will join the meeting with muted microphones. Please rename yourself to include your first name, last name, and affiliation. After roll call, board members may mute and unmute themselves. Always remain muted unless actively speaking. To participate in the discussion, please select the raise hand function. Find this by clicking on the participants button at the bottom of the screen, and a window will pop up with a raise hand button at the bottom, or the reactions button in the toolbar. The chair, he will then call on participants. If you are on the phone, you can use *9 to raise your hand. All right, now into our agenda. As I said, welcome everyone to the MPO meeting for Boston of June 6th. I'll turn it over to Dave to read the roll.
Thank you. Calling the roll for MassDOT Seat 1.
Steve Wolf will represent Secretary and CEO of MassDOT. Monica Tippett's not here.
MassDOT Seat 2.
John Bouchard, representing Highway Administrator Jonathan Gulliver, present.
MassDOT Highway Division.
MassDOT Highway Division, John Romano here.
MBTA.
Sandy Johnston, representing General Manager Phil Lang and the MBTA.
Massport.
Sarah Lee, representing Massport.
MAPC.
Good morning, Eric Barassa, representing Metropolitan Area Planning Council.
MBTA Advisory Board. Next, calling on the Advisory Council. Next, calling on the City of Boston, BPD.
Monroe, I'm representing Mayor Michelle Wu and the City of Boston.
City of Boston, BPDA. Next, at-large city, City of Everett.
Morning, Jay Monty, representing Mayor DiMaria and the City of Everett.
Morning. At-large city, City of Newton.
Good morning, David Kozas, representing Mayor Ruth Ann Fuller and the City of Newton.
Good morning. At-large town, Town of Arlington.
Morning, John Alessi, representing Select Board Chair Steve DeCourcy in the Town of Arlington.
Morning. At-large town, Town of Brookline. I'm going to pause for a moment here. Town of Brookline. Michael, if you'd like to unmute and just let your presence known. I'm so sorry, the audio is not coming through, Michael. Yeah, I'm going to note you for the record here. Mike Sandman for the Town of Brookline. And then the Inner Core Committee, City of Somerville, please.
Good morning, Tom Bent, City of Somerville, representing Mayor Ballantyne in the Inner Core.
Good morning. Minuteman Advisory Group on Interlocal Coordination, Town of Acton.
Good morning, Kristen Guichard, representing Acton Select Board Member Jim Snyder Grant for the Magic Subregion.
Good morning. Metro West Regional Collaborative, City of Framingham, please. North Shore Task Force, City of Beverly. Next, do we have North Suburban Planning Council, Town of Burlington? South Shore Coalition, Town of Hull. Southwest Advisory Planning Committee, Town of Rentham.
Rachel Benson here representing Joe Botash, Chair of the Rentham Board of Selectmen.
Three Rivers Interlocal Council, Town of Norwood.
Good morning, Tom O'Rourke from the town of Norwood, representing the Trick subregion.
Morning. Federal Highway Administration. Next, do we have the Federal Transit Administration?
Good morning, Kirsty Hostetter representing FTA Region 1 and Regional Administrator Butler.
Thank you. Just going back, is there anyone I have not yet called on the roll? Thank
David,
you,
looks
Michael.
like Jim Fitzgerald and Leonard Diggins too.
Oh, yes, okay. I'll note.
Did you get
This is-
Melissa Pauklis, North Suburban? I just joined later, sorry.
Thank you, Melissa. I'll note Melissa, Jim, and
Dennis Giambetti just joined from Metro West Region.
hello, Dennis.
Good morning.
Not at all. Good morning. And I think there was one other person. It was Len Diggins joined as well.
That's correct. That's
Thank
correct.
you.
Lenny D.
Hi, Len. Anyone else I have not called on the roll? With that, I will turn it back to the chair. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Thank you, Dave. We'll move on to agenda item 2, which is the chair's report, which I do not have anything to report. So we will now move into agenda item 3, which is executive director's report. Take it away, Tegan.
Hi there. Welcome, everybody. I'm Tegan Tyke, the Executive Director of the staff to the MPO, and I'll give you a few staffing updates, talk a little bit about grant letters, report, and applications, and then about today's agenda. So if you can go to the next slide, please. So first, I always like to give at least a quick introduction of new staff. This week, we just had a new assistant planner start with us. Her name is Lauren McGee. She started with the MPO activities group, like I said, just recently, and her role is going to be supporting MPO activities, MPO coordination, and kind of core program activities alongside the program managers. So she comes to us with a background in environmental analysis and policy, and I hope that you'll get to know her, and you'll probably see her face quite a bit in these meetings as well. So Lauren, I was hoping you could unmute yourself and say hello to the board and folks here today so they can see your face.
Of course, thank you, Tegan. Good morning, everybody. I'm Lauren, and I'm really looking forward to working alongside you all and getting to know everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Lauren. So folks, say hi to Lauren when you have a chance, and when she reaches out, get to know her a bit. Thanks, Lauren. I can also just let you know a couple of other updates. We also will have our new congestion management process program manager starting pretty soon in July. Her name is Priyanka Chapekar. She'll be starting and reporting to the MPO planning and policy group. So look for her in a few meetings. We'll introduce her as well. And then I wanted to mention that we have a few ongoing recruitments that are, we hope, in the final stages. And those are an assistant transportation planner in the capital programming area, as well as an accountant, one position. And then we are continuing our recruitment for manager positions in the data management and the travel demand modeling teams. We will also be posting soon new positions for recruitment in the multimodal planning and design and information technology groups. So please keep an eye out, and again, help us with those postings and help get the word out for us. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, I wanted to provide a few updates on grant activities, and I want to pause on this slide before going on to the rest of the report, just to be able to answer any questions or accept any comments that you all might have. So note that that's a little different than we usually run these reports. But just the context for this is, as we all know, with the unprecedented level of grant opportunities offered by the bipartisan infrastructure law, we are receiving quite a few requests for support letters for grant applications. These are coming from municipalities as well as other agencies in our region. And in the spirit of regional collaboration and working towards our common goals together, the MPO board had decided to, when possible, either discuss at board meetings or when timing made that not really feasible or workable, appoint the chair and the vice chair to discuss and make decisions on whether or not support letters could be signed in support of applications when they are aligned with MPO goals. So we have been receiving a number of requests, and we've been providing letters of support for those that we could. I do want to acknowledge that we haven't been able to return letters of support in time for all of those requests, given the deadlines. But I wanted to highlight the ones that we have been able to do that for. 5 of them have been related to the Safe Streets and Roads for All grants, and those were applications from Boston, the MBTA, Peabody, Quincy, and Watertown. And they were also able to submit a letter of support for the MWRTA for the federal fiscal year 24, the 5339B and 5339C grant programs. So those we were able to get in successfully and support our partners. But as I mentioned, we haven't been able to do that for all of the requests on the timeline. And so we're going to address this, on our own as well internally to try to make sure we can expedite what we can. And we also ask that if each applicant could provide 2.5 weeks, 2 weeks at a bare minimum from the submission deadline, basically reach out as early as possible. But if it comes to us less than 2 to 2.5 weeks, please consider that we'll make an attempt, but it certainly is very difficult to guarantee that we'll be able to get it through our process. So just a reminder, we'll work with you, please work with us. And we look forward to continuing to support applications as you all decide to submit them and when they are aligned with MPO goals. And then in terms of staff, each time that the staff to the MPO are considering or have decided to apply for a discretionary grant, I strive to ensure that the board is aware of that and that that the decision that staff is making to apply and that the focus of the application is in alignment with the MPO goals. And so in addition, if we were successful in an application, we would discuss with you all the strategy to ensure that we would achieve the intent of the grant while still, of course, prioritizing the MPO activity. And we did this pretty extensively with the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant, if you'll recall, to develop the Regional Vision Zero Action Plan, because it also required a statement for the board in support of Vision Zero goal. So at this point, I would like to also give you an update on a new opportunity that we are currently considering, and then pause after that, like I said, in case there's any discussion items. So there's currently an active a grant out, and that is due actually just in a few weeks, and it's the Active Transportation Infrastructure Investment Program, or ATIP. Like I said, it's due soon, it's due June 17th. We have not fully decided yet on a go, no go on this, but this is an important FHWA, it's both planning and design grants and construction grants for active transportation networks and signs. So we're strongly considering a roughly $500,000 planning grant to advance the regional bicycle and pedestrian plan. And this idea is part of an evolving multi-year vision for a bike and ped program managed by Casey Cooper, and as well as work that we've been encouraged to do by our federal partners. So we're still engaging in coordination with other stakeholders who are also interested in aspects of this grant or potentially applying themselves as well, like MAPC, other cities and towns, and other MPOs. So that's partly why this is still a work in progress. And so I wanted to make sure that you all were aware of those ongoing discussions. And I'm happy to pause here and just, field any questions or comments if there are any, Mr. Chair.
All right, anyone have any feedback or questions for Tegan?
I do. This is Melissa with North Suburban. On the active transportation, Tegan, you said you're partnering with other communities, or how is that with, what is that looking like? Is it the MPO seeking the grant and then it's redistributed, or?
Yeah, so actually I'll let Rebecca Morgan's here and I'll let her talk a little bit about the grant strategy. I think what I might have been referring to is that we're still discussing with other stakeholders who are also considering applications for grants and how we would coordinate with them. But that doesn't mean that it's necessarily a joint grant application at all. And Rebecca, if you're here, would you mind talking a little bit about what we're thinking for this grant application?
Sure, yes. Hi, good morning, everyone. And thanks for your question, Melissa. We are planning on applying for MPO funding to develop a regional plan, which the MPO would develop in coordination with municipalities. And the real focus is going to be looking at facilitating better connections across communities. So kind of at the more regional scale and developing a framework for doing kind of those kinds of assessments and a typology with categories of kinds of challenges. And so we have a draft narrative that I can send to you if you're interested kind of on more of the details of that, but it's at the regional scale. And so we're not intending for it to be like a sub-award kind of arrangement for cities and towns.
Thank you. So I guess if there are communities that are interested and they've looked at stuff like through Mass Trails or things like that, I mean, it seems like it would be a fit, but I'm not sure. Is it they would go separately, like, and do their own application? Or is it only for MPOs? I'm sorry, I'm not understanding what the money's for. Is it given out only to MPOs to do regional active, or is it like situational so that, you know, communities can, if they have a project? I wasn't sure about that.
Yeah, cities and towns are eligible for this grant. So if there's a specific project within your community that it certainly is eligible. And so cities and towns can apply for this grant. And I know that, you know, MAPC is considering an application. I don't know if Eric Barassa is here, but kind of looking on a very specific corridor, Winthrop and coordination with DCR. And so that's certainly a possibility. And there's both a planning and a construction grant. So if you have a design and you want to do implementation, that's also a possibility. That looks like Eric's hand is up.
Eric, you want to add stuff?
I can just add, yeah, this is a, unfortunately, it's a fairly modest program. It's only about 44.5 million for the entire country. You know, some of the other programs are like, you know, 800, $1 billion for the entire country. So this is a pretty small one, but we're, you know, under the theme of leave no stone unturned, like we're going, you know, interested in going after it. We've been talking with Winthrop and folks in East Boston about a section of the Mary Ellen Welch Greenway and partnering with DCR on that.
Okay.
There's a planning component with a max request of $2 million, and then there's also like construction as well. And I can find the information and post it in the chat for the grant, but it is coming up. I think it's due. I think it's due the 24th.
Okay. Thanks, Eric. Thanks,
Or
guys.
the 7th.
Appreciate that.
Actually, it might even be sooner than that. I think it's the 17th. Actually, but
My slide says 17th. I think that's what it is.
Oh, it's right in front
I'm
of us.
not wrong.
Yeah, no, it's the 17th.
Yeah, thank you guys. I don't want to keep everyone on this, but I appreciate that. So I understand it better. I appreciate that.
All right, thank you, Melissa. Does anyone else have any questions for Tegan? Hi, Tegan.
Thanks. On the MPO side, just, you know, please don't hesitate anyone to reach out to me or to Rebecca Morgan if you want to discuss any of these opportunities that, well, this one in particular further. I'm happy to have more conversations. So on to the next slide, please. So for today, we have 4 action items and 1 presentation. The first action item on here is, you know, a significant one. It's the vote to endorse the new federal fiscal year 2025 to 29 TIP. So you had previously voted this out for public comment. And so Ethan will be presenting on what we received in terms of public comments and any updates and changes that have occurred since the time of release of the TIP for public comment. So he will present on that. We will also have a briefer action item on a work scope, so work that will just be beginning. And that is on the exploration of infrastructure changes on VMT. That's a very big, broad name, but as you'll hear from staff, it's a very specific look at a data source and a tool to look at the impacts of very specifically sort of bus lanes and how that might affect infrastructure and travel behavior around it. So I'll let Stephen Andrews, he'll be much more eloquent than I, but just wanted to emphasize that the title is broader than probably the work that he'll discuss. And then also we'll have 2 amendment action items, amendment related. So a vote to endorse Amendment 7, and then a vote to release Amendment 9 of the prior, the federal fiscal year 24 to 28 TIP. And then we'll have a presentation on a study has really been a long time coming. It's the TIP before and after study, and it's one that has been discussed with our federal partners and that we've explored over a number of years due to a number of challenges related to the pandemic and data challenges. And it's really taught us a lot about how we might want to move forward in sort of doing this work in the future. And so Sarah Philbrick will talk a bit about those results. Next, please. So our next meeting will be on June 20th, and one of the big ticket items there will be to talk about any public comments and then ideally vote to endorse the federal fiscal year 2025 UPWP, which is essentially the work plan for the MPO for the coming federal fiscal year. There will also be the endorsement of an amendment, Amendment 8, and then also we anticipate coming to you with the proposed operating budget for CTPS, the staff to the MPO for the state fiscal year 2025. So we will look forward to seeing you on June 20th as well. And with that, Mr. Chair, happy to answer any questions.
Anyone have any questions for Tegan? All right, seeing none, Tegan, we will move on. Next agenda item is agenda item 4, public comments. Are there any members of the MPO, any members of the public would like to address the MPO today? I see Bill Degnan and Brad Rawson, Tanya and Steve Winslow, and then Brendan. So we'll start with Bill.
Okay, good morning. Thanks, Steve. Thanks, members of the MPO. I'm Bill Degnan with the City of Cambridge Transportation Planning. And I wanted to just make a brief comment this morning about a cause for concern that's come up to us recently, and that is related to the MBTA's Draw One Bridge project, and more specifically related to a central artery commitment that was originally part of that project to create a bicycle and pedestrian connection from the North Point neighborhood directly over to the North Station area. And we've been hearing lately that there's been a lack of progress on the inclusion of the bicycle pedestrian connection. And so we're concerned that there's kind of a lack of proponent and funding behind that. And we would like to draw everyone's attention to the fact that that's an extremely important connection, both regionally, because it is where the community path lands in North Point coming from Somerville. It's also going to be the future connection for the Grand Junction path coming through Cambridge and landing right next to where the community path comes. There is another path going right through the North Point neighborhood directly to the Charles River where this connection is supposed to be made. We've also, I just want people to be aware that this is the most important missing connection that we hear from businesses in the North Point area as an impediment to getting their employees to come and commute by transit and coming to North Station. They feel like if there was this direct connection to North Station, that it would be a lot easier for employees to use that to get to work. So I just wanted to bring that up. There is a meeting tonight that the MBTA is giving on the Draw One project, so we'll be interested to see what updates they give. But you know, from what we've been hearing, the news has not been good in terms of coordination between the DCR and the MBTA in this project. So I just wanted to make the MPO aware of that. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Bill. Brad, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Appreciate the opportunity to provide public comment. 2 quick ones, Chair. First, I'd like to support my colleague Bill Degnan from the City of Cambridge. The Draw One North Station project is really important to the regional greenway network and to the city of Somerville. So I appreciate Cambridge spotlighting this issue and encourage all of our state agency partners to continue to think about multimodalism and about efficiencies to be gained in design, permitting, and construction financing, particularly when projects like the North Station Draw are brought to this board for approval. Secondly, Chair, I'd like to thank MPO staff for the tip before after study that is going to be spotlighted later in this meeting's agenda. As you know, Somerville has been a strong proponent of this type of analysis and reporting. Both Tom Bent and I have consistently advocated for this body to make sure that we are looking back on our projects, documenting what has worked well, what can be improved going forward. Are we achieving our core goals of safety, sustainability, and equity through our TIP investments? So I believe that the technical report before us today is a really important step in that process. Now, Chair, as we go forward, for the record, I do want to note that there are ways to continue to improve the science of pre-post studies. For the next generation of this work regarding streetscapes like the East Broadway case study, we definitely need a more explicit multimodal method in evaluating project success. We need to make sure we are evaluating person trips, not just motor vehicle trips, person delay, not just motor vehicle delay. So obviously this study is a product of its time. It was primarily completed between 2017 and 2019, but with the benefit of hindsight, it's much more important that we evaluate bus mobility, bus delay, bus ridership, pedestrian and bicycle counts, bike share trips, and also street life, Chair. Our merchants on the East Broadway neighborhood have been so excited about the triple wide sidewalks that were achieved by reducing the lane cross section. So credit to Mass DOT performing that work at the request of the city of Somerville. But we can look at merchant revenues. We can look at customer intercept surveys. We can look at curb uses, parking occupancy, loading zone usage. Somerville has performed all of these types of analyses. So as MPO staff continue to refine this work and other project proponents continue to think about pre-post, please use us as a resource. We've got an immense library of data and a lot of in-house knowledge to support this critical work going forward. So again, we're here for you. Thanks for the great work. Look forward to continuing to partner.
Thank you, Brad. Tanya, you're next.
Hi, I'm speaking as a general member of the public, and I joined this meeting because I saw among the letters submitted some letters from Swampscott, which I'm not a resident of. I'd like to make a general comment about rail trail development, in that very often the abandoned rail trails develop into nature paths that are used by pedestrians as well as slower cyclists. And I think it's important to preserve that for the pedestrians, and it might be a worthwhile investigation to look into using existing paved roads for faster cyclists and electric bikes by perhaps creating wider bike lanes, even at the expense of changing car traffic, making some of it one way, as I have observed Cambridge has done on Garden Street. And I think that's wise, even though it's a little bit inconvenient for some cars. That way, I think we are helping climate change mitigation even more, because we're not destroying nature. We are allowing pedestrians to enjoy what they are used to enjoying, as well as some recreational cyclists what they are used to enjoying. And we are providing safer routes for the faster cyclists and electric bikes. So I think it's a worthwhile idea to consider moving forward. And thank you everyone for your thoughtful comments.
Thank you, Tanya. All right, next one up is Steve Winslow. Take it away, Steve.
Thank you so much, Councilor President Steve Winslow from Malden. I know I'm not actually down on the Northern Strand Trail, but everybody knows I've been a big advocate for that. Now that the trail is here, one of the things that Malden is now focusing on is improving our other roads, and we're working on developing citywide, complete streets plans. But one of the things we realized, we have 108 miles of road. We have about $1.5 million each year we get for Chapter 90 money. When we look at major roads like Route 99 and Route 60, we just don't have the capability as a city to make the tens of millions of dollars of improvements necessary. And so I'm speaking, we did make a request for design funding for Route 60. We appreciate that there was a community connections grant that allowed $1 million pilot in our downtown, which was a difficult thing. We realized that Route 60 in Malden has not undergone any major design changes really since the 1970s when it was laid out. The last major reconstruction was in the 90s. It was actually funded by the MWRA because of a water project. So it's a very deficient road. And as we found out on the pilot project, the traffic signals basically date back to rotary phone technology. We appreciate there's effort to upgrade that. But, we see Everett, projects in Lynn and Revere that are, tens of millions of dollars tackling these urban roads. We need design funding to make sure that we can continue the work of the pilot. I mean, we will not have the capacity to realize the potential to Route 60 to do the multimodal things, to serve bus riders better, as Mr. Ross pointed out, or as Tanya and Swampscott that we're getting pressure with the Northern Strand to have. We see motorized bikes going faster more often. We need to build alternatives to having the Northern Strand become a highway for purely motorized vehicles. We need to have safer streets like Route 60. One of the efforts that would be included in the design is to actually create a connection from the Northern Strand directly to the Malden MBTA station. But we need this is a major design effort and really beyond our capabilities. We have a challenge in Malden. Our Chapter 70 funding formula requires us to put the highest level of our city funds into funding our school system. So we are used to running very lean. I do have to say, since I've been on the council, we've advocated and now have a highly professional transportation planner, but without getting resources to actually help that planning happen, we're not going to go anywhere, and these roads are just going to deteriorate, and we just don't have the capability to even really repave them, let alone redesign them to full complete street standard. So I encourage the MPO to work with Malden. We have some ideas on how to make that reasonable, but we definitely need design money to make great improvements planned for Route 60, which is a major arterial street in our area. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Steve. We will now, Brendan, you're up next.
Great, thank you. My name is Brendan Carney. I'm the co-executive director of Walk Massachusetts, statewide pedestrian advocacy organization. Our organization's name was previously Walk Boston, and we have followed the slow progression and implementation of the new Charles River Basin Master Plan for decades. I'm commenting on the proposed removed pedestrian river crossing as part of the North Station Draw 1 Bridge Replacement Project. We're concerned to see that the second of 3 important pedestrian connections within the master plan is left out of the most recent bridge replacement project. That connection was a commitment as part of the Central Artery project and part of mitigation. Should be restored and worked on with a similar timeline as the rail crossing. Making this direct connection for people walking and biking between North Station and beyond is an important missing transportation link, as highlighted by both Bill and Brad, especially with the recent completion of the Green Line extension and community path through Somerville, 2 other often delayed Central Artery mitigation projects. I would like to remind people that the North Bank Bridge on the other side of the Charles River underneath the Zachem was also dropped at one point roughly 20 years ago. At that time, officials were sympathetic, but said the holdup was simply due to lack of funding. Let's not make the same mistake again. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Brendan. Next one up is Marzi Galaska.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to provide comments on the Swampscott Rail Trail. As you know, it's a project number 610666. So again, my name is Marzi Galaska. I'm the Community Development Director for the town, as well as a Swampscott resident. And I'm here today to provide you with a brief update on our project, as well as to request your continued support of TIP funding for our trail project. As you know, our trail is a 2-mile multi-use trail that's going to connect neighborhoods within the town of Swampscott to schools as well as recreational areas. Our trail will also connect with the Northern Strand, or the Bike to the Sea, that Steve just mentioned a little while earlier. We will also connect to the Marblehead as well as the Salem Community Path. Our design team from STV and Tylen Silman has been working with Linda Walsh and her staff at MassDOT on the design. Last week, we met with the team to discuss comments regarding the preliminary structures report that was submitted. We are actively working with National Grid to address truckloads over the bridge and relocation of utility poles. We have the funds to complete 100% of the design work. We will address environmental compliance. We are committed to work with the rail trail neighbors. As you can see in your documents today, you received 2 letters of opposition of the trail from the neighbors of the trail. I wanted to assure you that the town is committed to work with the individuals as we have done in the past. And as the benefits of the trail are many. The town is opening up a new 900 student school this coming fall. And we are very hopeful that the trail will provide cross-town access to the school, off-road access to the school, and add to the safety and the recreation opportunities for the residents. Like I mentioned, the school is located near the trail, and then we are very excited about both of the project. So thank you for the opportunity to share these comments.
All right, thank you. Next one up is Yem Lip.
Hi, good morning, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the time. I'm the city engineer for the city of Malden. I do want to make one correction for what President Steve Winslow mentioned, that the Chapter 90 that we get 950,000 per year, not 1.5 million. So it's quite a bit less than that. I want to highlight the point of Route 60, the redesign project. Also want to note that we sent a letter of support from Mayor Christensen requesting the MPO to reconsider the decision not to fund this project, and also a letter of support from the Malden delegation from Senator Lewis, State Rep Stephen Altrino, State Rep Paul Donino, and State Rep Kate Flipper. Again, the Route 60 needs a redesign, the whole corridor, and it's served pretty much it runs pretty much from east to west throughout Malden. It's a major corridor that's vital to Malden to have it redesigned, and the tip, decision to fund the design money would be greatly help in getting the project from starting the project and then getting the construction for the construction money. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Before I call on you, Sandy, is there any other members of the public who would like to address the MPO today? I don't see any, Sandy, so go ahead, Sandy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If we could, I just wanted to take a moment to address all the comments about Draw 1 and the bike pedestrian connection. Versus to reinforce what several people mentioned, that there is a public meeting coming up at which we invite folks to comment. Second, that we definitely hear the passion and the need for this project in the room. And I want to hand it over to my colleague, Josh Ostroff, for a moment to say a little bit more about the background on where this project is.
Thank you, Sandy. Hello, members of the MPO. Just very briefly, yeah, the MBTA, and I work at the MBTA. Of course. The MBTA is very committed to intermodal, transportation, and totally understand the strong interest in this, having a bike ped connection over the Charles in the vicinity of Draw 1. Over the past year or so, as design has proceeded, our experience. Oh, I should also mention, I'm sorry, that we will be providing comprehensive response to public comments after the CIP is approved. We anticipate that in July. The capital program planning team is very busily compiling all the comments and developing responses. And so this will be more fully explained. In the course of advancing the design for this, it's become clear that through the NEPA environmental, review process, we would need a separate Coast Guard bridge permit for pedestrian bridge structure. The drawbridges and the pedestrian structures would be physically separated and supported by their own discrete foundation systems. Planned ownership would be different. That is, the MBTA would not be the ones to own a pedestrian cycle structure. The arrangement, the span navigation, the navigational constraints would be different from the MBTA drawbridge. So we are also looking at needing to construct this. The entity that builds this, because it would not be the MBTA, would need to do this separately from the engineering and construction of the drawbridge. It's a very tight constraints. The Mammoth project to replace the drawbridges would need all available space within the waterway. So I think that to add the pedestrian structure would not be feasible as currently envisioned. Just want to add that the drawbridge is a critical component. It's one of the largest expenses in the CIP, all in about $1.2 billion. We've applied for grant funding to offset that considerably. Its importance to our transportation network needs to be understood. A third of commuter rail riders use this. It's vital for Amtrak's connection on the Downeaster. Replacing this structure, which is well past its useful life, is an MBTA priority and one that we take very seriously. That's not to minimize the importance of a future bike ped connection, connecting, continuing the community path. And as a advocate and wearing other hats for bicycle pedestrian connections, fully understand where people are coming from. But we'll be responding more fully. But I wanted just to take a minute to explain where things are at to the MPO, and don't want to take more time on your agenda. Happy to connect offline. Thank you so much.
All right, so I think with that, we've heard a lot. Please, if you're interested, you should definitely check out the meeting tonight to hear more from the MBTA team. So, are there any other public comments? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item 5, which is committee chairs' reports. Do any of the committee chairs have any reports? Derek, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to remind everyone that the current fiscal year 2025 Unified Planning Work Program is out for public comment until June 8th. So as Tegan alluded to, the vote to approve that will be taken at the June 20th MPO meeting. But just wanted to give folks a final reminder that it's currently out for comment for the next couple of days, and I'll copy the link for that in the chat. Thank you.
All right, any questions for Derek? Seeing none, Jen, you're up next.
Mr. Chair, happy to report that the TIP Process Engagement and Readiness Committee, otherwise known as TIPPER, met on May 16th. We had two major items on the agenda. One was a retrospective on the TIP development process, and the second was a preview of the changes to the MPO's contribution to 4 regionally prioritized projects. I first wanted to just share a few of the themes emerging from the retrospective. One was some resounding praise for staff for enabling virtual and occasionally hybrid meetings during this process. It really helps folks follow along and participate, and also for them being so on top of posting materials and recordings. Also some appreciation for the TIPPER committee as a venue for reflection and digging a little deeper into the TIP as it's developed. Some of the kind of areas for potential improvement that were brought up included some more direction to project proponents about how and when to provide comment, maybe even asking for written documentation of verbal comments, some earlier communication with municipalities around project readiness, and more structure around how we consider fill-in projects. The committee also generated several creative ideas for supporting proponents in project design, bidding, construction, and reporting. And I'll dig up and share the link to the board that we use to keep track of those ideas and have folks submit them. And meanwhile, I have locked that, but if you have additional ideas that you'd like us to kind of consider, the TIPPER committee to consider as we kind of continue these conversations this summer and fall, please feel free to email them to me. I will drop my email in the chat. And then the second item that we discussed was the changes to MPO contributions to some projects between the draft and final tip. I'll briefly summarize these, but I'll really leave it to Ethan to provide more detail and answer questions later in this agenda. The first major change has us covering a somewhat unsurprising cost increase to the Everett Beecham Street project following its 25% design submission to MassDOT. The second one increases the MPO contribution to cover the cost of an earmark that had previously been allocated to the Ashland Rail Crossing project. The feds have recently rescinded this earmark following what appears to have been a break in communication with the town. And members of the committee did ask Ethan to look into this a little further and present any findings to the full board today. And then the third and fourth changes also received a fair amount of discussion at the committee. They relate to two fill-in projects that the MPO adopted from MassDOT's statewide project list, the Wellington Underpass and Stratton School projects. The cost of those two projects have gone up 40% and 30% respectively from the initial amounts requested, despite some assurances to the board that they were stable because of their advanced stage and design. I really want to appreciate John Bichard for providing us a very detailed explanation of where those cost increases came from. Took some time to really walk us through the different contributing factors there. And he also offered to come back today with information on how the funds that were freed up by the MPO adopting those projects from MassDOT have been reallocated. So we should hear more on that later. So that's all I had for an update, a little bit of a longer one today. Thank you again for all the committee members for committing additional time to really continuously improve the TIP process, to the board for supporting this work, and the chair for the opportunity to report back.
Thanks, Jen. Anyone have any questions for Jen? Tom?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No questions for Jen. It's just there's no update of the MOU committee other than the date of the next meeting as a reminder, because it did change, is July 10th at 1 o'clock. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Tom. Any other chairs? All right. With that, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is agenda item 6, Regional Transportation Advisory Council update from Leonard. Take it away, Leonard.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So we haven't had a meeting since our last MPO meeting, but our upcoming meeting is going to be on next Wednesday, the 12th, and we will be doing a follow-up on the North Suffolk freight decarbonization study that was presented to the MPO a couple of months ago. We'll go in depth on that, and we'll also be talking about the plans for the MPO to do engagement education program. And, so I'm very excited about that, and welcome everyone to join us next Wednesday. Thank you.
Any questions for Leonard? Thank you, Leonard. All right, we'll now start moving into our action items. We're on to agenda item 7, which is the April 11th meeting minutes. Can I get a motion and a second to approve the minutes? Sandy?
I will make a motion to approve the minutes. I want to append one minor correction on page 8, really a short addition where it says the MBTA has significant state of good repair needs with an estimated state of good repair index of 24.5 billion. We'd like to add that we also noted there that we have identified over $11 billion in staff requests for projects that could not be funded in the current CIP. And whoever's working on this on staff, happy to provide that by email as well. But Mr. Chair, I will make the motion to approve these meeting minutes.
Was that Jen? And with Sandy's addendum to it, you're fine with that, Jen? All right. Anyone have any questions or comments? Or additional changes? All right. Seeing none. Dave, do you want to read the roll, please?
Yes, of course. Steve Wolfel.
Yes.
John Bichard.
John Bichard, yes.
Thank you. John Romano.
John Romano, yes.
Sandy Johnston.
Sandy Johnston, yes.
Sarah Lee.
Sarah Lee, abstain.
Thank you. Eric Barassa.
Eric Barassa, yes.
Len Diggins,
Diggins, yes.
Jen Rowe,
Oh, yes.
Jim Fitzgerald,
Chip Fitzgerald, yes.
Jay Monty,
Jay Monty, yes.
David Kozis,
David Kozis, yes.
John Alessi,
John Alessi, yes.
Mike Sandman,
Mike Sandman, abstain.
abstained, Tom Bent,
Tom Bent, yes.
Kristen Guichard,
Kristen Guichard, yes.
Dennis Giambetti,
Dennis Giambetti, yes.
Darlene Wynn,
Darlene Wynn, yes.
Melissa Tentopoulos, Rachel Benson,
Rachel Benson, yes.
Tom O'Rourke.
Tom O'Rourke, yes.
Thank you. And with that, the motion carries. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, everybody. Now we'll move on to agenda item 8, which is another action item, federal fiscal year 25 to 2029 tip endorsement. Ethan, take it away. Oh, wait,
sorry.
wait.
Can I just want to be recognized as I'm here. Sorry, I'm late. I had my own board meeting that just wrapped up.
All right.
Thank you, Dave,
Brian.
Steve.
All right, so Ethan, take it away.
All right. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. My name is Ethan Lapointe. I am the Transportation Improvement Program Manager with the Boston Region MPO. This first action item here today for you with regard to the tip is the presentation, discussion, and a vote to endorse the proposed federal fiscal years 2025 to 29 tip, the next tip, following the completion of its public comment period. If we can go on to the next slide and the one after to provide an overview of today's presentation. I'll be reviewing the public comment periods that staff received from members of the public, elected officials, and other stakeholders that took place during the 30-day review period, which lasted from April 22nd to May 22nd. Staff also received a few comments that came in after the period, which we will mention very briefly, that also relate to projects on the tip. I'll also provide a summary of some changes to projects that may have been identified along other items between not only the April 18th MPO meeting, but also the May 16th tip process readiness and engagement committee meeting, during which some of these changes were initially presented and some actions have been taken to address them. There will, of course, also be time to discuss some of these changes or respond to any questions that stakeholders may have. And again, culminating in a vote on the endorsement of the final federal fiscal years 2025 to 29 tip. On the next slide, as far as resources available for today, the entire final tip document and its appendices are posted on the MPO's meeting calendar for review and are also available on the MPO's website as well there. The tip document is a separate document with the appendix, or I should say the tip document is its own document with the appendices also as a separate file as well, should folks want to refer to that. With regard to the document itself, if we can go on to the next slide, the public comments relating to the contents of the tip have also been made available on the next slide. Within that appendices file I noted, which is Appendix C, Table C-2. Table C-2 specifically refers to public comments received during that public review period of April 22nd to May 22nd. C-1, which is the other table there, shows public comments that were received throughout the remainder of the tip development process. If we can go on to the next slide to provide a summary of what these comments are. During the actual public comment period, staff received 33 specific and discrete responses from various stakeholders on multiple projects that are programmed in the tip, including some comments around projects that community members may want to see programmed on the tip in the future. In addition to holding this public comment period, staff also attended and tabled at several public engagement activities to discuss projects that the MPO is funding, and also the vision, goals, and objectives of the MPO and how the tip and other certification documents relates to those activities. In the process of attending these events, staff engaged hundreds of members of the public in person to help to highlight some of the work that the MPO and also its stakeholder communities conducts. In addition to past engagement events, staff will also be in attendance at the Everett Transportation Fair this Saturday on June 8th. And there will also be a hybrid in-person and virtual meeting planned to host MassDOT for their capital investment plan, which is a complementary document to the tip, on July 1st at 6 p.m. at 10 Park Plaza in downtown Boston. And of course, in addition to this, staff will continue to pursue opportunities for public engagement region-wide. So if there are events happening in your communities, please feel free to share any of those opportunities with MPO staff. So with that, into the actual letters and comments that staff received, starting off with a letter that was received from the Interstate 495 Metro West Partnership that expressed supports for projects in Metro West communities. This also included projects that the MPO newly funded in the federal fiscal years 2025 to 29 TIP, including the Route 126 project for Hartford Road in Bellingham, the Route 126-135 project for design funding in Framingham, along with the Chris Walsh Rail Trail, or I should say the Chris Walsh Trail for design in Framingham, and the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, which MassDOT is funding in Framingham, in Holliston with new projects on Route 16 and Whitney Street, Marlboro for the Route 20 Granger Boulevard design project, Norfolk, Walpole, and Rentham for the Metacomet Greenway, Sherburne for the Route 16, Route 27 design project, and Sudbury for the third phase of the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. They also included express support for continued transit investments region-wide, but also specifically for the Metro West Regional Transit Authority. There was also some expression of concern around some delays on several projects on the TIP, some of which were discussed at the MPO, the TIP Process Readiness Engagement Committee meeting on May 16th, and also a request that certain projects listed in the TIP universe of projects be advanced in future cycles. If we can move on to the next slide. Staff also received a letter from the MBTA's Rider Oversight Committee expressing support for the MPO's continued collaboration with the transit agencies and providers throughout the Boston region, and support for projects that have been funded through the first official year of the Transit Transformation Program, specifically citing the MBTA system-wide Pedal and Park project, and continued investments being made through community connections, bicycle and pedestrian connection investments, and also the Blue Bikes investment programs on the TIP. The next letter was from the Regional Transportation Advisory Council, which expressed support for the processes that the MPO and its committees have taken this year to improve information sharing with MPO members and the public. Specifically, the Regional Transportation Advisory Council noted the rigor of the equity analyses and also requested that as part of evaluating the impacts of TIP projects following their completion for construction, that evaluatory measures would be a positive contribution there, which may be discussed about later in this meeting. RTAC is also supportive of the project design pilot and the projects funded through it, and also various transit projects as well. On the next slide, staff received multiple letters from the city of Malden, including their city council, the mayor's office, their state representatives and senators, and also residents expressing support for the continued funding of the route, or I should say, of new funding for the Route 60 reconstruction project. This was a design funding request where the city of Malden initially requested $2.6 million, as the project would have spanned the entire limits of the the majority of the limits of Route 60 in the city of Malden from Pearl Street over to Lynn Street. However, the city is now requesting or believes that $1.7 million for their initial design needs may be able to address certain areas of pavement in the project limits that have the greatest deterioration to date. Namely here, given the project as has been met with MassDOT District 4, would be constructed over 3 phases. The phases of the project, such as Phase 3, which is near Malden Center, and a formerly completed community connections project for the addition of bike lanes, may utilize funding to implement improvements to make those seemingly temporary community connections investments more permanent. The city has also noted that one of the phases of the projects could be completed for as little as $750,000 of design money, or an even lesser amount of around $350,000 could be utilized for conceptual planning or other design work there. Moving on to the next slide. Staff also received a letter from the town of Milton and their select board expressing opposition to MPO scoring criteria that are currently on the books that penalizes projects that are located in municipalities. The penalty that the criteria applies here is for 5 points if that municipality is not in compliance with Section 3A of the MBTA Communities Law. This is listed under the access and connectivity goal and is related to how whether or not a project is situated or located near a planned or future housing development site. and there's additional points that are awarded if a project is specifically near or located within an MBTA communities district or other transit-oriented developments. It should be noted that this criteria does not apply to any municipalities that are not designated as MBTA communities, of which there are 4 in the Boston region, or any municipalities that have not had their deadline for MBTA communities compliance pass yet, which is to say that if a municipality may be a commuter rail or adjacent community, their project would not see this penalty potentially be applied if they were not compliant, should they apply for the federal fiscal years 2026 to 2030 tip. It is also worth noting that this comment solely relates to the criteria and not to any specific projects, as the town of Milton does not have any regionally prioritized projects on the tip, nor did this town apply for any funding through the federal fiscal years 2025 to 29 tip. The next slide is the Weston Route 30 reconstruction project, for which staff received multiple comments, petitions, and letters from residents and other stakeholders expressing a combination of support and opposition for the continued funding of the Route 30 project in Weston. The letters and comments that were in support of the project noted that it promoted regional connectivity with bicycle facility projects that the MPO is currently investing in Newton on Route 30 there, including a bridge over the Charles River, and also planned connectivity improvements for future work potentially in the town of Natick and Wayland. It would also improve bicycle and pedestrian safety along with safety for all other road users. The letters, comments, and also 2 petitions that were received that were against the project cited concerns around potential decline in property values related to takings for shared use paths, reduction in vegetation, and then potential traffic conflicts at intersections that may result from adding bicycle facilities to the roadway. There was a recent town meeting vote on May 6th, which approved the design funding to continue to advance the project, with 285 of the attendees voting in favor, which completes the amount of design funding that the town of Weston would need to continue to advance the project to completion. All of this feedback has also been provided to the town, so it may be considered along with MassDOT as the project advances. In similar fashion with the Belmont Community Path, the town of Belmont provided a letter to the MPO to provide an update to members on the project status related to revisions around the project's 25% design submission, also noting that the support locally for these revisions was demonstrated at the November 2023 town meeting to advance further design funding. Staff also received 3 letters and some comments opposing the project from abutters to the path, citing noise, vegetation control, high volumes of users, namely from a local nearby school that would be utilizing the proposed path, which was stated to potentially raise concerns around crime or trespassing from the traffic there. Moving on to the next slide for the Swampscott Rail Trail. Staff received 3 letters from abutters to the trail expressing opposition to its construction, namely citing concerns, as was previously, around vegetation, wetlands impacts, and right-of-way takings. Staff have been in discussion with the town and other stakeholders to advance the project. It currently has an advertising date in federal fiscal year 2028, and an update was provided earlier by town staff as to how the project is progressing. Moving on to the next slide. That was the summary of all of the written letters that staff received related to public comment. I'll now move into the actual changes that have taken place since April 18th. To help members identify where changes have been made in the TIP document, a table highlighting major content changes has been provided and is available on the calendar for reference, indicating the section of the document that the change may have taken place in, and the page number that is within the PDF version of the document for that change, just as referenced there. Provide a summary of these changes. Staff presented on the next slide. Many of these programming changes that relate to funding levels or scopes of work for projects at the May 16th TIP process engagement and readiness committee meeting. During this meeting, many of these changes that I'll be briefly mentioning here were summarized and discussed in more detail, and staff have also obtained further information to help address some of the outstanding issues or questions that were raised there. Most of the content changes that have taken place since the May 16th TIP committee meeting have been corrections to make sure that projects and other changes there are consistent throughout the document, and to also make various other clarifying or administrative adjustments to text. So moving into the specific content changes for projects, as was noted earlier, there was a cost increase for Everett's Beecham Street reconstruction project, given a recent submission of 25% design, increase in the project's relative cost from about $10.9 million to $12.54 million. In order to accommodate this, as there was insufficient contingency funding in federal fiscal year 2027 for the increase, the final proposed tip that is going before members here today for a vote reduces the transit transformation set aside, a separate pool of money, from $6.5 million down to $5.5 million in order to attain fiscal constraint in federal fiscal year 2027. This decrease does not preclude that amount from being restored or brought back up to $6.5 million should funding come available in the federal fiscal years 2026 to 2030 tip cycle. It's worth noting that this set aside is unlikely to be utilized for applications until about 2 tip cycles from now. Similarly, on the next project for Ashland's Cherry Street grade crossing, for a refresher here, this project in Ashland previously had a $480,000 earmark, which was an additional contribution to the project from the Federal Highway Administration, beyond the $840,000 that the MPO was contributing approximately in regionally prioritized funding. Given some recent recommendations for delays to the project and also other factors as well, the earmark, which has been on the books for quite a while at FHWA, was rescinded on April 17th. This was presented at the May 16th TIP Process Readiness and Engagement Committee meeting, and members of that committee raised questions around what activities the town was undertaking to continue to bring the project to fruition in fiscal 2028. Staff have met with and spoken to the town to identify the need for near-term actions to continue to advance the project, namely with regard to continued coordination with the Federal Railroad Administration for quiet zone compliance, the MBTA and Keolis for commuter rail connectivity, and also MassDOT for continued work on bicycle and pedestrian design requirements relative to right-of-way needs in the project area. As with the Beecham Street project, there was insufficient contingency funding in federal fiscal year 2028 to offset this loss of the earmark, and therefore the Transit Transformation Fund is being recommended for reduction by $500,000 to offset that. I'll also note now that the project cost estimate is $1.3 million, but given some of the items that have been raised by those transit stakeholders, the project cost may be likely to increase as the design progresses, because there may be a need for additional upgrades to rail, track, and other utility facilities in the project area. Moving on to the next slide. The Cape Ann Transportation Authority has requested, since the tip was originally put out for public comment, that their fiscal year 2025 funding for the on-demand microtransit service expansion project, which would expand on-demand microtransit into the Lanesville neighborhood of Gloucester and into the community of Rockport, be removed from the tip. Year 1 and 2 funding for the project, which was in federal fiscal years 2023 to 2024, did not advance due to staff constraints at the authority. And year 2 funding has already been removed from the tip via a previous amendment to the 24-28 tip cycle. This amounted to about $220,000 of funding in federal fiscal year 2025. With that said, the Cape Ann Transportation Authority has recently received a grant from the Regional Transit Innovation Grant Program at MassDOT for $550,000 to provide a weekend on-demand pilot to Gloucester and Rockport to still continue to try and provide some of this level of service. And on to the next slide for the last 2 changes here. This reflects increases in 2 projects that were shifted from statewide prioritization on the tip to regional prioritization on the tip, which is to say that these are 2 projects: the Wellington Underpass connection in Medford for the Mystic River Greenway, and also the Stratton School Safe Routes to Schools project in Arlington, were previously funded in the MassDOT statewide highway program, but at the at a previous MPO meeting, these projects were voted to be incorporated into the regionally prioritized program. Both of these 2 projects have seen further cost increases since they were originally programmed on the tip, or programmed into the regional portion of the tip, with the Wellington Underpass project increasing in cost from $5.51 million to $6.06 million. This is a further increase beyond what the initial request to MPO members was, which was $4.3 million. In Arlington, for the Stratton School Safe Routes to Schools project, This project cost increased from $1.6 million to $2.1 million. This is the first time an increase has been noted on the project. Both of these increases were the result of design submissions that had taken place in March and April, with some of them received before the vote was originally taken place to incorporate them into the regionally prioritized section of the TIP. These items are discussed in more detail at the TIP Process Readiness and Engagement Committee meeting on May 16th. And these increases also fall within the federal fiscal year 2025 regional target constraint, leaving about $1.3 million of contingency in that year after accounting for not only these changes, but the Cape Ann Transportation Authority change I mentioned on the previous slide. So with all of that in mind, to summarize at a very high level what the regional target program looks like for the TIP right now, the MPO's regionally prioritized project list funds 69 projects at about $728 million. On the next slide, to show this in a more graphically pleasing format, this leaves about 0.5% of that funding unprogrammed should future cost increases be witnessed. So with all of that in mind, on the next slide, and all of these considerations, including the cost changes to be incorporated for Arlington, the Arlington project, Medford, and the Beecham Street project in Everett, and covering the gap resulting from the earmark on Ashland's Cherry Street project, MPO staff are requesting that the board votes to endorse the federal fiscal years 2025 and 29 TIP. I'll happily take any questions.
All right, before I call for motion second for endorsement, are there questions for Ethan? All right. Yes, Leonard.
Well, no questions, but just a comment, and I mean the difference between the draft and the final version is just truly astounding, Ethan, and that table, corrections, I've never seen anything like that, and I'm very much impressed by that, so great work, to you and the rest of the staff, just a really excellent document, regardless of what people think of the projects. Just the document itself is really, really impressive. So thank you very much.
All right, Jen.
I was curious if there's a ballpark that we try to go for in terms of what level of contingency feels comfortable and safe, and kind of how that compares to the contingency we have available after these cost increases we've seen.
My understanding from previous TIP cycles is that figure generally hovers around 2%. With that said, even prior to the changes that were presented here today, the MPO is currently looking at around 1 to less than 1% of contingency held in reserve for unprogrammed projects, or unprogrammed funding, I should say.
All right. Jen, is that a follow-up?
Follow-up. Yeah, I guess that then leads me to want to understand, the TIPper committee had asked folks at MassDOT to kind of come back and share sort of how the funding that was freed up by the projects that the MPO adopted, whether that funding has been reallocated to other projects, just to understand is this something that is it going elsewhere to projects that we'd be supportive of, or if not, might there be an opportunity for MassDOT to take those projects back and leave us with a bit more of a flexibility and closer to that 2% figure?
Jen, are you looking for an answer today or just at a future meeting?
I was looking for it today because that's something we had brought up at TIPper, but I understand if it's not information you have available.
John, do you have any thoughts on that?
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We had talked about the two projects, Arlington Safe Routes to School and the Medford Wellington Underpass. The Safe Routes to School program, what the funds reallocated to, other Safe Routes to School program projects that that we currently have programmed in fiscal 25, and those are still being worked out based on readiness, programming, etc. And on the Medford Wellington underpass, which was programmed with CMAQ funds, which is where we fund the highest percentage of our trails projects. We're working with communities on shifting funds and adjusting schedules with Linfield and Wakefield on their the trail up in that region, because they had been pushed off to while those communities were re-engaging a new designer and updating up things, but nothing has been nothing formal has been set aside. Jen, that CMAQ program, where with all of our projects, we're struggling with some cost overruns in a few areas as we're coming down to the end of our state fiscal year at the end of this month, and trying to allocate funds as best we can with the CIP under discussion for release in the next couple of weeks. So I don't have all the specifics, but those generally were what our recommendations were back to our team at HQ.
All right, Jen, does it answer your question?
Yeah, thank you for that additional detail. I guess I imagine it might introduce some difficulty at this stage to make adjustments to RTIP. So I don't necessarily wish to propose that, but I would just request that once the CIP is finalized, if we could kind of hear a report back on the use of those funds.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions or comments? All right, can I get a motion and second for endorsement? Eric, and then Leonard.
Eric Barassa, I'll make a motion to approve the tip as presented today.
Dickens will second that motion. Thank you.
All right, any last questions or comments? All right, seeing none. Dave, you want to read the roll, please?
Yes, please. Steve Wolfle.
Yes.
John Bichard.
John Bichard, yes.
John Romano.
John Romano, yes.
Sandy Johnston.
Sandy Johnston, yes, and thanks to Ethan and the team for a great process.
Sarah Lee.
Early, yes.
Eric Barassa.
Eric Barassa, yes.
Brian Kane.
Kane, yes.
Len Diggins.
Diggins, yes.
Jen Rowe.
Jen Rowe, yes.
Jim Fitzgerald.
Fitzgerald, yes.
Jay Monty.
Jay Monty, yes.
David Kozis.
David Kozis, yes.
John Alessi.
John Alessi, yes.
Mike Sandman.
Mike Sandman, yes.
Tom Bent.
Tom Benton, yes.
Kristen Guichard.
Kristen Guichard, yes.
Dennis Giambetti.
Dennis Giambetti, yes.
Darlene Nguyen.
Darlene Nguyen, yes.
Melissa Tentakalis. Rachel Benson.
Rachel Benson, yes.
Tom O'Rourke.
Tom O'Rourke, yes.
This motion carries. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ethan. We'll now move to the next agenda item, which is agenda item 9, which is the work scope for exploration of infrastructure changes on VMT. And this is Stephen Andrews. So Stephen, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hello, my name is Stephen Andrews. I'm a principal data analyst with the Boston Region MPO. Today, I'll be presenting the work program for the exploration of infrastructure changes on vehicle miles traveled. This work, budgeted for $90,000, is funded through MassDOT PL funds. We expect the project to take a year to complete, beginning in the current federal fiscal year and spanning into federal fiscal year 2025. Joining us today are the MBTA project manager, Jay Jackson, manager of Transit Signal Priority, and Alex Hallowell, director of Transit Priority. Local governments across the region are in the process of prioritizing the safety and sustainability of our transportation systems. One way to realize these goals is the reallocation of roadway space to bus priority lanes, which provide an avenue for a more pleasant and consistent transit experience. However, when roadway capacity is shifted to make way for bus lanes, the people who use that capacity are faced with a choice. Do they make the same trip? Do they alter their spatio-temporal travel patterns? shifting their departure times or paths? Do they decide to take the bus? Do they decide to stay home? Better understanding of how VMT might be affected by these reallocation projects could help traffic engineers craft more realistic traffic simulations as they move through their design processes. It could help planners communicate the impacts more completely and more confidently with the public and their other stakeholders. In partnership with the MBTA, Replica, a transportation mobility data provider, has developed initial insights into the question of how bus lane projects affect VMT. Using their Places products, which is powered by GPS data from vehicles and commercial fleets, point of interest visit data, census and marketing data, and ground truth data, the Replica team demonstrated that near bus lane priority projects in many transit agencies across the country, VMT appears to decrease when you're very close to that project. This trend, however, was less clear for the MBTA as it was for other agencies, which leads to more questions about how these changes affect our agency or how it affects the MBTA. Through this project, we'll dig deeper into the methodology that Replica has stood up, extending and adapting it to explore this topic in greater detail. Could we alter the specifications of how the analysis was completed, tweaking certain parameters? Can we adapt the methodology to explore time of day trends that occur at certain types of bus lane projects? Or could we perform the analysis on a mode by mode basis? Are there differences between certain types of bus lane or the levels of enforcement or community respect for the bus lanes? After we agree on the next set of questions with our partners and stakeholders, staff at the MPO will go through the mechanics of the data analysis, finishing by producing useful documentation for our stakeholders. Thank you, and I refer it back to the chair.
All right, thank you, Stephen. Anyone have any questions for Stephen? Leonard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, well, just a couple comments, and a request. So first, I am thrilled in task one, to see that you are going to submit the research for publication. Yeah, I almost put in the comments, the advisory council's comments on the UPWP. That would be good to see more of our research get published. And I took it out after a conversation because it seemed like it wasn't the right place for it. But still, I'm happy to see that at least MassDOT and the MBTA is going to do that, because I think it will be helpful to the transportation research community at large. And I guess it is just one comment and a request. Kind of the standard request on something like this is that would you please consider sharing the memo with us. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Leonard. Before I call on Julia, are there any other members of the board that have any questions for Stephen? Jen.
I do, but I'm happy to have Julia go first.
Well, go ahead, Jen. I called on you, so go ahead, Jen.
Okay. I'll go.
Go ahead, Jen.
So I guess I have a series of questions. I am first of all just very excited to see this scope of work. I was just recently in conversations around how challenging it can be for us to understand a lot of the impacts of our projects that reallocate the right of way. Often we have really good data on speeds, and so we can see where speeds become safer. We can get count data, but because of the variability in counts by time of day, and all sorts of other things, it hasn't been as satisfying what we've been able to share back with the community around projects like Center Street as one recent example, not a bus project, but a bike lane project. So this is really great work. The questions, I put this out to our planners in Boston, and people had a lot of different thoughts. One question was, are the bus lane that it sounds like it's mostly lanes, but I'm curious also if you're considering interventions that are more transit signal priority, short of having designated lanes. are the ones that are being analyzed those that have had the highest impact on travel time and travel time variability. We know that not all of these projects are equal in their impacts, and we certainly have ones that have made substantial changes to travel time and others that due to limitations in how we're able to restrict parking in these lanes, for example, or enforce that, have had less impact. So I was curious how you were going about picking which projects to look at.
Stephen?
Yeah. So the initial research that Replica did, it was, they looked at most bus lane projects in the region. With how the modeling worked, it had a straddle 2019 and 2023. So the bus lane had to not be there then and be there now. So that limited the pool of bus lanes to those that straddled the before and after style analysis. There are certain ones that don't make sense in this analysis. There's on 93 North, there were some bus lanes. So it's not really what we're looking for exactly here. So I could see in this case, imagine a table with attributes of bus lanes, or the quality of a bus lane, not like the is it providing lots of travel time savings kind of quality kind of things, not and then as we look at the research plan, do bus lanes that have provided a larger decrease in delay, are those do you notice a larger impact than those that don't? Like that I think that's something that's in the realm of things that would be interesting to explore through this work. And then it's the same thing of is it a bus lane that is not seen as a bus lane by the community that is traveling by it? Does that yield the same effects as a well-respected bus lane? I see that Jay has his hand up. This is Jay Jackson, the project manager. If you'd like to.
Jay, do you want to add anything to it?
Sure. Yes. Thank you very much. I'm Jay Jackson. I'm in the Transit Priority Group and was one of the ones that kind of started working on this with Replica and eventually brought in CTPS and OPMI and a number of other transit agencies. And so my real hope with this research would be to get some sort of a metric that correlates bus lane miles or bus lane miles times revenue service hours, correlating that with a reduction in VMTs, not necessarily on that roadway, but potentially at different buffer zones around that, to try to quantify the induced demand that we all kind of understand qualitatively. And, if that's mode shift, route shift, evaporated trips, drop trips from general purpose vehicles, because a lot of times I think when we're trying to propose new bus lane projects, especially as we're reallocating this roadway space, we are the way that a typical traffic engineer might do it is they might look at some future condition and put a growth model on the vehicle volumes, and then that gets plopped into a synchro model or some other software, and then it shows levels of service, which I know we don't it just shows operations that are unrealistic and don't take into consideration induced demand. So hopefully that was some helpful context, and I really thank you, Stephen, for wanting to continue this research.
All right, any other board members have questions? Jen, is that a follow-up?
Follow-up, just thank you for that. That's really exciting, and I think that would be incredibly valuable. And I think my two other thoughts on this, one was just a suggestion from one of our planners, which was to maybe considering, I think you spoke a little bit about segmentation, and to think about potentially land use context as one of those ways of segmenting the analysis. And then the other one is, and I think you've kind of answered this a bit already, which is the, I guess, the intent here mostly to create a methods for predictive modeling, which I think Jay just spoke to. So it sounds like that is on the mind. And I guess the other is this also kind of a methodology for retrospective evaluation of projects. And my sense is it would be valuable as both. Just wanted to confirm that.
That's the hope and that's the goal. I know the vendor, of course, is looking to develop a tool within their replica service that can be used nationwide. We also have some preliminary results that I think we could share. Probably should have asked at first, but that Replica's developed that shows kind of the challenges within our community versus much cleaner data at some of the other transit agencies that were a part of this project. WMATA, King County Metro in Seattle, the City of Philadelphia, Maryland Transit Agency, and Indigo in Indianapolis. So we could share that if folks are interested. I think that's, yeah. Thank you.
All right, any other board members? Julie, you still have a question? All right, looks like not any longer. So can I get an motion, a second, to approve the work scope? Eric?
Eric Brass, I'll make a motion to approve the work scope as presented today.
Leonard?
Diggin seconds.
All right. I think there's any more questions? Jen, you have one last question?
Sorry, Julia just messaged me saying that she's trying to get off mute. She may be a minute.
Okay. Hi, sorry, it's Julia here. Is it too late to ask a quick question?
No, go ahead.
Okay, sorry about that. Thanks for that presentation. I'm obviously really thrilled about this study and had proposed something like it for UPWP, and such a critical body of work. I love that the focus is on VMT reduction and changes in travel pattern as a result of roadway allocation for bus lane. But I was wondering, and maybe I missed this, is there also an element to look at congestion and like congestion on general purpose traffic as a result of this? Because that's usually the hot button opposition to these projects is like, there's going to be so much traffic if we, quote unquote, take a lane from general purpose traffic. And now that we've had so many of these projects in place for, upwards of 5 years or more, I'm wondering if there's opportunity to also look at that, like vehicular travel times, roadway congestion, in addition to VMT, or if that's outside the scope.
Stephen or Jay, do you guys want to answer?
I'll let Stephen take that one.
I am planning to focus on VMT, as that is one of the tools that it is one of the things that we can measure readily. It is a measure that is readily available to us. I could think more on how I would answer that congestion problem, and if it fits within the framework, I think tackling that would be a reasonable thing. I just need to think about how to do that inside the tools we have available.
Jay?
I was just going to suggest that the vendor is on Replica, and so they may have an interest, or perhaps it's something we can take offline and figure out how we could incorporate into either a future scope of work or try to address it.
Hi, everyone.
So-
my name is Emily Lucas. I'm with Replica.
Wait, Emily, didn't call on you yet, so.
Oh,
So we have a motion and a second. Are we willing to, to me, there's two things. This seems like a significant ask to add to the project, so we'd either have to table this and take it up once there's a fuller discussion on this, or do board members want to approve it and then see if Stephen fits in the scope, or staff come back with a recommendation for a second phase of this? Eric?
I think that it sounds like staff are amenable to looking into how this could be explored, given the budget and the tools they have available. And I think if they if they're able to, that's great. And I would leave it to them to see if it can be incorporated based on their budget and their tools. I don't feel like we need to necessarily change anything here.
Leonard, you say you're agreeing?
I essentially agree with Aaron. So that's it. Thank you.
Stephen, do you actually think you can do both or some level of it within the existing budget?
I would want I think I would want more clarity on exactly what the change would be
Okay, Rebecca, you
from
want
what it is.
Yeah, I was just going to respond. I think we would want to take a look at what that would take, because I think it's a hard question to answer without actually looking at the tools and the data and thinking about methodology. Can we come back to the board with a response to this following the scope approval?
So that's why I framed it the way I didn't get a sense from you guys that you were comfortable within the existing budget doing this. So Rebecca, I think you're asking us to table it for this and then the June 20th meeting, take it up when you guys have had a week or two to explore this further. Is that what I'm getting a sense of?
Well, I'm wondering if the VMT focus could be approved, and we'll investigate. If we can do it within the existing budget, we'll plan on moving forward with it, and we'll just notify the board that we are going to move forward with that analysis. If it's beyond the scope and budget of this project, then we could perhaps develop a separate scope that could then come before this board and be approved.
Sandy, you shaking your head in agreement? That's what you were going to say?
Yeah, exactly. My suggestion was going to be this, since this is MassDOT directed PL funded, we'd like to do some more internal coordination and coordination with you folks at MassDOT and with the MPO to understand the implications for that pot of funding. But that is a federal fiscal year pot of funding, so we'll roll over on October 1st, and we're currently in a process of prioritizing our needs for that funding and working with your office, Steve, for the fall. So I would ask that we vote this out now and then potentially look at expanding the scope in fiscal year 25 using the same pot of funds.
All right. So it sounds like we have clarity on this, and Rebecca and Stephen, you guys will go back and work with the T on. All right. So with that, it sounds like Eric and Leonard were fine with that approach, and they made the motion second. So I think what we'll do now is, Dave, I'm going to call the question. Can you take the roll, please?
Happy to. Steve Wolfel,
Yes.
John Bouchard,
John Bouchard, yes.
John Romano,
John Romano, yes.
Sandy Johnston,
Sandy Johnston, yes.
Sarah Lee,
Sarah Lee, yes.
Eric Barassa,
Eric Barassa, yes.
Brian Kane. Calling on Brian Kane. Len Diggins,
Diggins, yes.
Jen Rowe,
Yes.
Jim Fitzgerald,
Gerald, yes.
Jay Monty,
Jay Monty, yes.
David Kozis,
David Kozis, yes.
John Alessi,
John Alessi, yes.
Mike Sandman,
Mike Sandman, yes.
Tom Bent,
Tom Bent, yes.
Kristen Guichard,
Kristen Guichard, yes.
Dennis Giambetti,
Dennis Giambetti, yes.
Darlene Nguyen,
Darlene Nguyen, yes.
Melissa Tentopoulos, and Tom O'Rourke.
Tom O'Rourke, yes.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Stephen. And we'll look forward to staff coming back with some clarifications on the points raised today. So with that, we'll now move to agenda item 10, which is another action item, federal fiscal year 2024 to 2028 tip amendment 7 for endorsement. Take it away, Ethan.
All right, thank you for my second presentation today. As was noted, this is for the federal fiscal years 2024 to 28 tip, the current tip being Amendment 7 to endorse it. Now, if we can move on to the next slide, Amendment 7 is familiar territory relative to the federal fiscal years 2025 to 29 tip, as it proposes changes to all years of the transit program to reflect changes that are being made to the MBTA's draft capital investment plan, a capital investment plan whose changes are already reflected in the 25-29 tip as well. And again, these changes are also already present in the MBTA's capital investment plan too. Each of these changes not only apply to each of the years of the federal fiscal year 24-28 transit program, but also in the section 5307, 5337, section 5339, and other federal funding programs from the Federal Transit Administration that the MBTA utilizes, including financing. If we can go on to the next slide, there was one public comment that was received during the 15-day public comment period, which lasted between May 20th and June 3rd, 2024. This shortened 15-day public comment period was approved at the May 16th MPO meeting, as it was intended to facilitate the MBTA's capital programming efforts for not only the endorsement of their CIP, but also to enable them to pursue federal discretionary grants in June and July, namely pointing towards the preventative maintenance line items that are new to their CIP. And again, these changes that are within Amendment 7, which had its own 15-day public comment period, were already reflected in the 30-day public comment period that was held for the federal fiscal years 2025 to 29 TIP, and the engagement activities that the MBTA undertook and will continue to report back on for their CIP. So to provide a summary of that public comment that staff received, this was an inquiry from a member of the public as to the nature of the preventative maintenance work and funding levels within the MBTA section 5307 and 5337. In consultation with the MBTA, staff referred the commenter to materials that the MBTA will be posting this summer to address various frequently asked questions as to the nature of their programming decisions and other investments being made around their CIP. Staff also noted that the preventative maintenance funding that is listed on the TIP in that dedicated category in section 5307 and 5337 does not demonstrate the totality of all of the state of good repair and preservation investments that are in other MBTA programs as well, including the track improvement program and rolling stock replacement activities that can be found in like the track and signal program or other bridge project and work that is embedded across all MBTA investments. So with all of that, staff are requesting that the board votes to endorse Amendment 7 following the completion of that public comment period.
All right, can I get a motion, a second, to endorse amendment number 7? Eric?
I will make a motion to endorse Amendment 7 as presented today.
I'm noting a trend here. Leonard?
Someone has to fill in for Kane, so I second it.
All right, any questions? Leonard, do you have a question? You just have your hand raised from seconding.
I'm sorry, I still just have my hand raised. Sorry about that. Let me get it down.
Any questions? All right, seeing none. Dave, you want to read the roll?
Yes. Steve Wolfel,
Yes.
John Bouchard,
John Bouchard, yes.
John Romano,
John Romano, yes.
Sandy Johnston,
Sandy Johnston, yes.
Sarah Lee,
Sarah Lee, yes.
Eric Barassa,
Eric Barassa, yes.
Brian Kane, Len Diggins,
Diggins, yes.
Jen Rowe,
Oh, yes.
Jim Fitzgerald,
Fitzgerald, yes.
thank you, Jay Monty,
Jay Monty, yes.
David Kozis,
David Kozis, yes.
John Alessi,
John Alessi, yes.
Mike Sandman,
Mike Sandman, yes.
Tom Bent,
Tom Benton, yes.
Kristen Geetshard,
Kristen Gouchard, yes.
Dennis Giambetti,
Dennis Giambetti, yes.
Darlene Wynn,
Darlene Wynn, yes.
and Tom O'Rourke.
Tom O'Rourke, yes.
This motion carries. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ethan. We'll move on to our last action item for Ethan, which is agenda item 11, action item federal fiscal year 24-28, tip amendment 9. This is to put it up for public review. Go ahead, Ethan.
Okay, so for the next action item, as mentioned, this is a request for a new amendment to the TIP federal fiscal years 2024 to 28 for Amendment 9 for a 21-day public comment period. Amendment 9 proposes 2 changes to federal fiscal year 2024 program projects, one being a project that is currently listed in the statewide highway program and the other being currently listed in the regional target program. The regional target project is Rentham's construction of the Interstate 495 at Route 1A ramps project. And the second statewide highway project is a multi-bridge preservation contract for 10 structures carrying Interstate 95 in Burlington, Linfield, Wakefield, and Woburn. As I'll get to on the next slide, while the Rentham 495 Route 1A ramps project is in the regional target program, a portion of the cost increase on this project will be funded through the statewide highway program. So if we can go on to that next slide to show this in more detail. So as mentioned, the cost increase for the construction of the 495 Route 1A ramps is being driven as the project has recently attained the plan specifications and estimates, or PS&E stage, as of March 1st of this year. When reaching this design stage, project manager and the consultant identified that there were additional hazardous material disposal needs in the project area, along with some bedrock removal work near some of the ramps on the project. The project cost has increased as a result, going from a current budget of about $18 million up to $20.62 million, a $2.62 million increase. Of that $2.62 million, about $420,000 of that will be borne by the regional target program, with the remaining $2.2 million being taken from the statewide highway program. The reason why there is only a portion of the funding here coming from the regional target program is there is no remaining regional target funding in federal fiscal year 2024 to accommodate further cost increases. The remaining contingency funding besides this amount was already allocated to cost increases that have previously been accounted for in other TIP amendments. On the next slide for the other project, this is the bridge preservation contract for some of the northern suburban communities. This being a cost increase from about $4 million to $12.95 million, an $8.95 million increase. The reason for this is because the project recently had a 75% design resubmission that was received on April 24th. This indicated that the structures in the contract, which there are 10 structures being preserved here, required additional work related to their barriers and various other spot and work replacement needs that is beyond what is currently funded at that $4 million price threshold. So again, this is about $12.95 million for preservation work on 10 bridges carrying Interstate 95. This is one contract with multiple structures. So with that, on the next slide, staff are requesting that the board votes to release Amendment 9 for a 21-day public comment period, with comment commencing next Monday, June 10th, and concluding July 1st, 2024.
All right, anyone have any questions for Ethan? All right, can I get a motion, a second, to approve sending this out for public comment? Leonard and, oh, wait, Eric and then Leonard, think.
I will make a motion to approve this amendment as presented today.
Leonard?
I will second it. It's a little hard to second this one, although I was having problems with my raising hand for other reasons, but yes,
I know you
second
kept going on and off, so I'm like, is Leonard
No.
playing with someone else or not? I wasn't sure if it was Tom or you, so.
it. Yeah, no problem.
All right, so Leonard second, any questions? Leonard, do you have questions or?
No, I mean, so, no, I'm not gonna ask him. Thank you. Sorry.
All right, anyone else have any questions? All right, Dave, do you want to read the roll, please?
Yes. Steve Wolfel,
Yes.
John Bouchard,
John Bouchard, yes.
John Romano,
John Romano, yes.
Sandy Johnston,
Sandy Johnston, yes.
Sarah Lee,
Sarah Lee, yes.
Eric Barassa,
Eric Barassa, yes.
Len Diggins,
Diggins, yes.
Jen Rowe,
Oh, yes.
Jim Fitzgerald,
Gerald, yes.
Jay Monty,
Jay Monty, yes.
David, yes, David Kozis,
David Kozis, yes.
John Alessi,
John Alessi, yes.
Mike Sandman,
Mike Sandman, yes.
Tom Bent,
Tom Bent, yes.
Kristen Guichard,
Kristen Guichard, yes.
Dennis Giambetti,
Dennis Giambetti, yes.
Darlene Wynn,
Darlene Wynn, yes.
Tom O'Rourke,
Tom O'Rourke, yes.
Have I missed anyone on the roll? That motion carries. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ethan. I think we can you take a break now, Ethan. So now we'll move on to agenda item 12, the tip before and after study. Sarah, you want to take it away?
Sure, thank you. So Brad sort of teed this up for us earlier today, and I appreciate him doing that because a lot of what I'll talk about includes the limitations of this study and ways that we'd like to think about doing before and after studies in the beginning. But my name is Sarah Philbrick. I'm the manager of MPO Planning and Policy. And can we move to the next slide, please? I'd like to first acknowledge that this work started before the pandemic and long before my tenure at CTPS. So I'd like to thank those who created the bulk of this report, mainly Ryan Hicks, William Kuttner, and Mark Abbott, all formerly of CTPS, and Julie Dombrowski, who contributed substantially to the data analysis used in this report. Next slide, please. So we score TIP projects based off of their potential benefits to ensure that the project that the MPO is selecting for funding are supportive of the region's long-term goals. To further evaluate the efficacy of that scoring and selection in advancing the region's goals, the board and staff, in response to input from our federal partners through the 2019 certification review process, began discussing an approach to evaluating projects after completion. Before the pandemic, a project was conceived based off of this federal certification review to review the impacts of TIP projects through the congestion management process program. Because of that origin, this project uses analyses and measures related to CMP, utilizing traffic counts, synchro analysis, and crash data to conduct the analysis. This analysis provides some insight into the built projects, but doesn't take into account other critical measures of success, such as health benefits, usability, or mode shift. Therefore, the report contains an incomplete assessment of the 4 projects selected. But we will review Lebanon Street reconstruction that took place in Melrose, Hancock and East-West Quantum Streets in Quincy, the Broadway reconstruction in East Somerville, and the Community Path extension in Somerville. All of these projects had construction completed in 2015 or 2016. And overall, we found that the results based off of the analyses we completed and the metrics that we completed are mixed. All projects indicate some benefits, but not all. And by recognizing the limits of this analysis, the study provides insight that we need a methodology that's a little bit more inclusive of the full range of goals that the MPO and these projects try to achieve. We don't view these results yet as an evaluation of the projects, but rather a helpful exploration of the opportunities and limitations of this particular approach to the analysis with the goal in mind. Please keep in mind as we describe the results and move into the conclusions and next steps. Next slide, please. So I'm going to start talking about the Lebanon Street reconstruction and Melrose. The functional design report listed a number of problems before construction, including damaged curbing and cracked sidewalks, accessibility features that were non-compliant with modern standards. There was no defined shoulder for bicycles, a lack of turn lanes through the quarters, and excessive queues at the intersection of Lebanon and Upham Streets. Lind and Grove Streets were also very close together, causing confusion for cars turning. Next slide, please. So on this slide, we have two pictures of the intersection, one before reconstruction in 2014 and one after reconstruction in 2016. In the photos, we see, you can see improvements to curbing, sidewalks, and accessibility features. We created a defined shoulder for bike protection, and there was a redesign of the intersections of Lebanon Street and Lind Street and Upham Street so that folks making turns could more clearly see what street they were going down. Next slide, please. This slide is 2 pictures again of before construction and after construction, 2014 and 2022 at one of the intersection of Melrose, Upham, and Lebanon Streets. And the main change here is for the pedestrian crossings and the extended sidewalks and bicycle shoulder to make walking, biking, and rolling easier. Next slide, please. So the study evaluates the improvements of this area in 3 categories: safety, traffic flow, and urban design. Next slide. There was a large priority to avoid land takings for this project, mainly because most of the project included single-family homes and personal property. So the road was modified in a way that allowed for wider sidewalks, but did not require land takings. There was a decrease overall in from 73 to 58 crashes in the project area. Most of this was due to a decrease in angle crashes from 31 to 12. Delays increased in about half of the intersection studied, largely due to left turn movements on Main Street southbound. Signal timing changes, in addition to growing demand in the area, likely led to an increase in congestion, but roadway surfaces for bicycles and pedestrians were greatly improved. Next slide, please. The next project that this study looks into is the Hancock and East-West Quantum Streets in Quincy. The functional design report listed a number of problems before construction, including long delays and congestion for all approaches during peak hours, crash experiences greater than the state average in this intersection, a lack of provision for bicycles, long pedestrian crosswalks, and no signal coordination. Next slide. This slide shows two photos before construction in 2014 and after construction in May 2016. The sidewalks are probably the most, the sidewalks and road crossings are probably the most obvious change that you could see in that photo. Feel free to go ahead. This study evaluated improvements to the area again in three categories: safety, traffic flow, and urban design. Next slide. Unfortunately, in this area, we saw crashes increase by 20% in the larger study area. However, there was particular focus paid attention to North Quincy High School and McDonald's, as there is a drive-through exit very close to the high school. And in that particular intersection, the crashes remained unchanged. Unfortunately, we don't have traffic count data for the before time period, so we don't know specifically if crash rates increased, but 20% increase in crashes indicates that unless, you know, traffic increased substantially, we are seeing an increase in crashes. The MBTA did add another entrance to the Red Line station in between the before and after period, which rerouted traffic in this intersection. And there was an addition of a new city Target and Starbucks, which likely contributed to an increased amount of eastbound traffic. There's still some challenges in the area, especially accommodating vehicle drop-off and pickup at nearby schools. And that is something that should continue to be assessed in this particular intersection. The study also looks briefly at the Broadway reconstruction in East Somerville. There were many goals to improve the streetscape. That was an area that was largely seen as a throughput of Somerville many years ago, and we wanted to make sure that it was more friendly for folks walking, biking, and rolling. So the goals of the project were to reduce the capacity of travel lanes, change parking use regulations, and widen sidewalks and bicycle lanes. Next slide. This is a photo of before construction in June 2010. Next slide. And this photo shows after construction in June 2019. Because so many of these changes were made to improve the experience of walking, biking, and rolling down the street, it's hard to see from the aerial footage, but you can see an increase of trees and a widening of sidewalks that make this street feel like more of a boulevard. Next slide. We also had a change in parking on that street after construction. This is some loading zone signage that was that we took a photo of in August 2020. Next slide. And the improvements to this study were also looked at the improvements to this road were also looked at in three different areas for our study: safety, traffic flow, and urban design. Next slide. There was a decrease of 55 to 31 crashes in the project area overall. Crashes with injuries decreased from 16 to 7. There was also a decrease in vehicles of through traffic on Broadway between 2007 and 2023 in the AM peak of about over 1,500 vehicles. And there was a specific analysis done in the report that indicates that there were no significant diversions away from Broadway between McGrath and Lombardy Street that would inversely impact the area, because that is always of concern when we are reducing the capacity or the speeds of any particular street. Next slide. And the last project looked at in this study was the community path extension in Somerville. The goal was to expand the shared use path from Alewife to Leechmere and complete a portion of the planned 104-mile Central Mass Rail Trail. Next slide. On the left, we have a photo of the rail right-of-way at Lowell Street in 2021, and then the same place in 2020, looking at that is now a community path in the same location. And next slide. We also have another before and after photo of the rail right-of-way east of Cedar Street in 2001, and then the community path at Cedar Street in 2020. So you can see what a big change there's been in the last 20 years. Next slide. The study evaluates the improvements to this area with two categories: the level of use and the general design of the area. Next slide. We counted about 1,300 users in a 12-hour period on March 23rd, 2023. This is fairly close to the 2003 20-year projection they had, which indicated that they expected about 1,700 users. The community path has also successfully connected areas of Somerville to the Green Line, which was one of the original project goals. Next slide. So we know that in doing this project, we found it can be very difficult to isolate the impact of projects when a study area and the region are consistently changing. There's new things being built all the time. Traffic patterns are changing. For example, in Quincy, when we saw the addition of a new Red Line station opening. And while roadway safety was prioritized in all projects, our crash statistics show improvement for some, but not all locations. I know that Brad mentioned this and Tegan might have as well, but I think we're understanding that there's a need for more frequent, quicker analysis of TIP-funded projects to make data-driven funding decisions. It's really difficult for the board to understand what needs to be done or how we might want to change our funding decisions when it takes so long to do some of these very detailed studies with synchro and traffic counts. Next slide. So again, we've realized that there's a need for both robust studies like this and more nimble analysis of TIP-funded projects. In addition, a lot of the metrics that were identified for the study came out of the CMP program, but we think that the MPO board and staff should work together to identify performance metrics and data needs in advance of project construction and to help us track project progress after construction and make sure that we are collecting the data that we think is most relevant to make decisions. There's a need to systematically review project outcomes to their scoring criteria to see if our projects are really working towards the region's goals. So that is all I have for folks right now, but open to any questions or discussion about this study or how we might be able to improve our before and after studies going forward.
All right, anyone have any questions or comments for Sarah? Leonard?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So probably comes as no surprise, Sarah, that I'm going to ask you to come to an advisory council meeting so we can talk about this a whole lot more. So I'll work with you to schedule this as soon as possible, as soon as possible, maybe being as late as September. And so, but quick question now: how much does the study cost?
I don't know the answer to that because it has lasted for so many years and has been funded by different pockets. So it was funded as a discrete study, but then also funded by the CMP program, and I think from some other pools as well. So I can look into that, but I'm not sure if we have a total number.
Okay, but are we talking like more than 100K?
I don't know the answer to that. Tegan, do you have any
Okay,
better
that's fine.
insight on that?
That's fine.
Yeah, I'm
That's fine.
sorry.
I'll just accept.
Well, then one thing
Go
I
ahead.
could maybe clarify is just say, like, one thing we could do is go back and look at the original intended amount of the study. But regardless,
Yes.
when something like this does end up stretched out, delayed by the pandemic and like the difficulty of finding good targets, it's going to become more expensive than it would take in a more ideal circumstance anyway. So, but let us get back to you on the scale of it, because I think that is an interesting question of what was originally intended for the scale anyway.
Yeah, and I especially think
Fine,
Tegan was interested to do some updates and so, yeah. Sorry, Leonard, you all set, Leonard?
No. Just and this is maybe more directed at you, Steve. You know, so given that the feds want us to do these kind of follow-up analyses, which I think is great study, and for me, it'd be nice to get a time series and also get some sense, maybe even by using the travel demand model to get a sense of what would have been if we had not done these projects. But since the feds want us to do it, would it be possible for us to allocate this money when we fund a project? Because I'm trying to fund the money without taking the money out of the CTPS or the UPWP budget, because are doing few enough discrete studies as it is.
So to answer your question later, I only know one circumstance where you can factor that into your budget, and I believe that's under the New Starts program with FTA. But we can go back and see if there's any other opportunities. I do know about that, at least when I was doing the Green Line extension and other projects like that. I knew that was part of it, but we can certainly look into it.
Okay, that's it. Thank you very much.
All right, Tom or Tegan, did you have something related to Leonard's or something else?
Yes, thank you. We were able to track down, somebody else was able to track down the initial intended cost of the study was $60K. So but that does not mean that's what it costs, but that was what we thought it would take to do this originally.
All right, thank you, Tegan. Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to thank Sarah and staff for doing this. This is something I've been asking for a long time on the MPO, so it's great to see this. And I like what you and Len just talked about. If the cost of this could be factored into the project, and at the project when a project is proposed and started and then accepted, to make sure that staff knows what the goals were of what they were hoping to achieve by the end of the project. So I think all those are great comments, and I wanted to thank everyone involved for moving this forward. Thank you.
All right, anyone else have any questions or comments for Sarah? All right, I don't see any, but I'm sure there's a lot of interest in this. So Tegan, I'm sure we'll be talking about maybe next opportunities to do this kind of work. So with that, can you bring up the agenda where I think we're on our last item, which I believe is probably member items, agenda 13. Any members have any items for the MPO today? John.
Hi, Steve. Thank you. I just want to let everybody know, if you haven't heard, we will be closing the Sumner Tunnel again this year. Full closure. It's only 1 month this year instead of 2. So July 5th to August 5th, it'll be closed. And we're also doing weekend closures this weekend and the next 2 weekends leading up to that full closure. And Steve, if possible, if there's time on the agenda, I'd like to have a potential presentation at the June 20th meeting. I don't know if there's room at the MPO meeting, but if we got 20 minutes to squeeze us in, I should have asked earlier, but
That's all right, John. I think, Tegan, we can obviously work on it. That seems like an important thing to be doing in June. So we'll figure out a way to do something, John, I think.
all right. I'll touch base with you guys. Thank you.
All right, thank you, John. Any other members have any items? All right, seeing none, could I get a motion second to adjourn? Leonard? Leonard, I think you're muted.
I'm sorry. I'll dig this motion to adjourn.
Jen?
I'll second that motion and also use it as a way to just throw in a thank you to MPO staff for attending our State of the Streets event last week. We had a great conversation about regional planning.
All right, all in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you, everybody. Got a
Thanks,
lot.
Steve.
We'll see you in a couple of weeks. Everyone be safe. Thank you.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.